rebuilding confidence, and harmonizing with nature. With over 4 decades of changing lives, your self-discovery archaeologist, get ready to be the best of you with your host, Beverly Zimet.
Hello and welcome to the Beverly Zimet Show, where being the best you can be, it just got easier. My guest today calling in from Denver, Colorado, literally Denver, downtown Colorado, and her name is Jennifer Bilger. Welcome, Jennifer. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. I am so excited to be on your show today.
Good. Can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do and what makes you tick and, a little bit about life?
All right. Jen Bilger. I go by Jen, by the way.
Okay.
I am a business and sales coach, but I like to say that I'm a connector of people first and foremost. I focus on the behavioral side of business, and why I am so excited about the behavioral side is it's the how and why we do the things we do, and I help people understand that a little bit better and utilize those strengths in their business to make it grow, to make it more successful.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Sounds very interesting. So, how's business these days, seeing as how we're all in a different realm of things, shall we say?
Yeah, so very good question. Thank you. It's been kind of crazy. As an extrovert, this is driving me insane staying inside. I told somebody, I think I'm 18 of being inside in quarantine because I actually had to be self-quarantined before the actual order for my city came out. So it's kind of crazy times for somebody who likes to be interacting face-to-face with people.
Exactly.
But business is as usual. All my clients were easily put into a virtual world with me. So I can do Zoom meetings and things like that. I've been doing a lot of virtual webinars and virtual workshops and things like that. And my pivoting in my business was very simple for me to get into it because a lot of it is just figuring out how to spend that one-on-one time.
Right.
And one of the main things that I like to do is figure out what's best for my client, not what's best for me. So my adaptation was a little bit easier because I tend to do it normally and naturally in my business. But business as usual, it's a little bit more because a lot of what I do is help people understand the obstacles, how to overcome them best, how to adapt to something that's new, a lot around what their businesses are and making those adaptations to become more successful. So I've been holding free webinars and things like that for clients and non-clients to kind of help them do that. So it's been a fun ride. I actually like the new opportunities that have opened up. This is my first podcast, and I have to admit I'm a little scared of being on camera. And so it has actually pushed me into a realm of doing things that I'm a little uncomfortable with since I've been spending so much time through a camera with most people. So it's been very refreshing for me, I should say, even though I'm stuck in a space in downtown Denver. Looking out, I can look out my windows though, so it has a beautiful view. So,
Well, that's good. Are you facing the mountains?
I actually have a view that is kind of in a corner that faces both the mountains and the city. So I get,
well, there you go. The best of both worlds.
yes, I have a very beautiful nighttime view with all the lights, and I have a very beautiful daytime view where I can see the mountains. So for those people who are not familiar with Denver, you can be in pretty much any part of the city and have a view of the mountains.
Pretty much.
Yeah, because it's like it curves around, the mountains curve around the city.
Yeah, Denver's actually in a valley.
Yes,
Right.
and that's what most people don't understand.
Right.
It's a mile high, but it's a valley
It's a
still.
valley. That's right. Yeah, because when you look at 10,000, 15,000 in these mountains, right? So yeah, the 1 mile high at 5,000 is not so bad.
And it's kind of funny because a lot of people think we're in the mountains, and I'm like, yeah, they'll see snow in the mountains and think you guys are getting hit by snow, and we're like, no, it was 65 degrees today.
I know, isn't that crazy?
65 degrees. Wait, that's a little bit of secret we don't like to tell people. So,
You know, and another thing too, like when you're out there in the wintertime and the sun is shining, right?
yeah.
And it might only be 30 or 40 degrees, which is really actually cold, but because you're so close to the sun during the wintertime, being that mile high, right, that it feels so much warmer than it really is. But beware, when that sun goes down, woo, doggies, now you're cold.
Well, and it happens in the summertime too. We got married in the end of August, and we're from the Midwest, so those are the dog days of summer. That's when it's
Oh,
like
yes.
humidity. There's no humidity here, and so that plays a lot into when the sun goes
And
down.
there's no flies either,
There's
or
no
very few. Yeah.
The bugs are not here. But we got married in late August and had our family from Ohio out. And one of the things I kept telling people is please bring jeans and long sleeve shirts. And they're like, why? And I'm like, yeah, there could be a 30 to 40 degree difference, and it does get cold. It cool at night during the summertime. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does, and it's a big difference. So you
It's huge.
roots. And being in a valley, we get wind and things like that. So
Oh, yeah, those Chinook winds come down there. Whoo. Yeah.
yes, from Denver, if you know what a Chinook wind is. So
That's right. I've experienced that when I lived there in the 80s. I had a business and I drove truck, right? So I had a body shop business with the paint and body, and I dealt with a lot of the shops and stuff. I had my paint store basically in the back of a big truck. And I'll tell you, when them Chinooks come down and them winds, you did not go on the
Yep.
interstates. You stayed down in the streets because 100-mile-an-hour winds, and you're rocking and rolling, honey. So it can be a little bit scary sometimes. And so I really got to know all of the Denver area, and that's back in the 80s, and now it's expanded so much out. Where I traveled before was just dirt. That's no longer dirt. And I worked a lot down in Colorado Springs. I had a run that I went down there every week on Wednesday, and there was a lot of space in between there. I mean, literally nothing. You had the way station, and that was it. And now, because back then they were talking about someday,
Yeah.
it's going to be city all the way from Colorado Springs all the way to Fort Collins. And you're saying, yeah, right. Well, yeah, right. It's happened. It's
It
really
pretty much
happened.
does. With
Yeah.
Castle Rock and Highlands Ranch being down there,
Oh,
and
gosh.
they are, and you've got those little towns in between. When you hit Monument, it's like that's the halfway. That's like the where it turns from Denver Metro to Colorado Springs Metro.
Yep.
So
Exactly. And that used to all be just nothingness.
uh,
Nothingness. And I'm telling you, driving back some days in the wintertime, you're down that road and that wind was blowing or it was snowing, you didn't see nothing. And you talk about running out of gas. You mentioned earlier when we were talking before the show about running out of gas. Well, you better make darn sure that you got gas when you leave Colorado Springs so that you can get back to Denver.
Yes.
It's only an hour drive, but if you get stuck in snow or traffic because it's slow or something, it's it's a whole nother world.
Yeah, like I was telling you before, I never understood. I'm from back east, so we're very congested back there, and there are gas stations. I don't think there's more than 10 miles between gas stations here, if that. And I mean, usually you have exits on the highway, and even in more rural areas, you have little. I guess it would be little towns and little villages that have, the gas station and things like that.
Right.
And so before I moved to Colorado, I never understood how people could definitely, who could actually run out of gas. And it was such a experience for me the first time I drove from Ohio to Denver when we moved out here, because going through Kansas, I definitely understood how you could
Yes.
my thought process back in Ohio was, what kind of idiots don't run out of gas when gas stations are so close together? And I had to change my way of thinking about it and say, what kind of environment is going to cause somebody to be able to run out of gas because they're not doing what they're supposed to do or paying attention to signs?
Right.
So it was a different way of thinking for me and an experience. And the other thing is, I had never seen a tumbleweed before.
Right.
And I thought those were fake. I thought they were only in those Westerns and they were fake that were added. And I mean, it's not that I didn't have intelligence and didn't understand. Like, I just never experienced it before because you just don't get anything that's that dry. what people don't understand about Ohio is it's got a lot of water in it. It's got the Great Lakes up to the north. It's got the Ohio River to the south, and the Ohio River is big enough to have huge boats and things on it. So I mean,
Mhm.
it's pretty expansive. And then you have lakes and streams that run throughout the state as well, and rivers. We have main rivers that run through the state. So it's surrounded by water. Being in a drought in Ohio, even though we had experienced it, it wasn't like being in a drought out
Right.
here. You don't get the snowpack from the mountains. You don't have enough water. Like in Ohio, even when we had droughts, people would still water their lawn and things like that. And I mean, it was only when it was extreme drought conditions that we didn't do things like that. And here, as soon as summer would hit, when we had a house where we had a sprinkler system, we could only water on certain days of the week,
Right.
and they would actually have people who would go through and find people if you were not doing that. And that was something that was completely different to me, being in such a dry environment and so expansive, and how you get your water supply. So it was just a new experience.
A lot of people don't realize that Colorado is actually high desert, and Wyoming,
Yeah.
the Dakotas, even that's all considered high desert. New Mexico, Arizona, because you think of the desert as the
Yeah.
Mojave, right? I remember the first time I went to Vegas, which is an oasis in the desert, so to speak. I'm thinking, the Mojave Desert, right? And all of a sudden, what the hell are these mountains doing down here?
Exactly.
and and what is this? Is like, well, my concept of desert really, really changed, And another thing, because I moved from Iowa, which is basically almost identical to Ohio, and coming out and experiencing that. I mean, we had rivers, and they were rivers, right?
Yeah.
So here you are in Colorado, and they call this a river, and it's like we call them cricks, right?
No,
Or
it's
creeks or whatever.
I love
And
that
you,
you do that. I was just thinking, yeah, that's not a river. That's a well, I say creek now because I've been in Colorado longer.
right,
But creek and a stream. Um, like
right.
I'm like, you could walk across this river. You can't walk across a river.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So
Where I'm from. And they have lakes here, and I'm like, where I'm from, these are ponds.
yeah, that's so true. That is so true. First time I said, okay, we're going to Stanley Lake, right? And it's like, okay, so you're thinking this lake, like
Yeah.
because in Iowa we didn't really have big lakes, but we lived just an hour from the Minnesota border, and Minnesota is definitely lakes, lake state, and so it's massive. I mean, it's like being on the ocean, so to speak, right? It's huge. And so we go to Stanley Lake, and you're looking at that like, that's a
No.
lake? Really?
Oh, Lake Erie. You can't cross it, and Canada's on the other side. So it's like this is not a lake.
Yeah. It's again, you look at that environment that you're growing up in, and what and as soon as you start moving into a different element, it's like, whoa. And so again, like you say, your perception, you begin perceiving things because your experiences are different, your database starts at broadening, and you have to start learning the language of the area that you're in. The cultures,
Right.
are different, and so it's a learning curve, and it's a journey in everything that we do. And so when you come from one avenue or another, and then you go overseas. I don't know if you've ever traveled overseas.
Yes.
That's another whole world. I mean, first time I went to Europe, right? You jump the train because it was the easiest way to get around. You talk about congestion, honey. You ain't seen congestion unless you've been over in the UK, and and you go from one country to the next,
Yeah.
like you drive, like if you're out in the eastern part, one state to the next, right? But when
Wow.
you're in the western states, because they're so much bigger, by the time you come across all of the Colorado
Yeah.
or New Mexico or Arizona, you spend that same amount of mileage as you've already been in 5 different countries over
Oh wow. I
there.
think
Yeah, it's kind of like being up in that northeast corner of the U.S., where you're running across New York and New Hampshire and Vermont and Maine and Connecticut, and they're all like right there, bing, 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 right?
so. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. change your perspective for different areas. And when I moved out west, it was a different way of thinking. It was even culturally there were differences. Like,
Right.
casual dress for business is much different out here than it is back east. Casual back east, where it could be business casual, is more khakis and dress shirts and things like that, or maybe even polos and things like that. So it just depends on the type of business and where you are.
Yeah.
Uh, Business casual out here includes jeans quite often. So uh,
Right.
you have a different way of thinking and a different way of looking at things. And being from somewhere where, I mean, my very first job was business dress, and I basically had to wear a suit every day to work, to coming out here where business dress includes jeans, so jeans and a blazer. And I
Hey,
actually have to
we're
admit,
going
I'm
back to the cowboy days, you know?
blazer today. You have to assimilate yourself into the culture and environment that you're
Yeah.
in,
Right.
and it's a lot more laid back out here
Yes,
than
it
it was
is.
back.
For the massive volume of people that are in Denver itself, it's still a very laid back city.
It is a very laid back city.
And I know when I first moved to Vegas in '89, there was like 500,000 people there.
Okay.
Now there's 3.2 or 3.5 million. A huge difference, right? They call it Little LA because most people from LA were coming over into the Vegas area. But you talked about running out of gas. And now being in the desert, incorporating something different like that, it's like if you're going any distance, you make sure you always have water in the car,
Yeah.
especially if you're going down 15, leaving Vegas and heading to LA, is to
Yeah.
have water because some of the mountains that you're going up in and everything, your car can overheat real easy, especially in the summertime because that heat is so intense. Because again, we are high desert, so that heat is so intense that the wear and tear and the pressure it takes to drive up some of those inclines that are pretty steep, the car will overheat.
Yeah.
So again, it's understanding, well, why would you need to take water? Of course, you take drinking water. No, you have a couple extra gallons of water. So if
Yeah.
your car does overheat, you can start to cool it back down before you bust a hose or something. Because you know what? It takes a long time to get a tow truck out there or to get a repair vehicle out there. You talk about a lot of space in between, and it's still a lot of empty space in between that run from LA to Las Vegas.
Very much so. So
Yeah.
you just have to change what you're doing and change your perspective. I equate it to a lot of what's going on right now, where businesses have had to immensely change their formats and things like that. And I have
Right.
a lot of my workshops, and I'm doing a lot of virtual things right now that center around how to understand change, how to incorporate it, and how to figure out what needs to happen. There's a lot of businesses that I work with, they might do where they're in construction sales and things like that. So they work with a lot of home shows to get their leads.
Right.
All of those things have been canceled or rescheduled for later in the year,
Hmm.
where some of the bigger home shows are usually in the spring, and they usually fall in March and April. And
Exactly.
thankfully, we got through most of the home show season before this started really hitting the season.
Oh, well, that was good. That was good.
So February really starts those big, and the biggest home show in the spring actually was at the end of February, beginning of March. So there was still a lot of foot traffic and still a lot of things that were going on for that. But
Right.
when you think about it, you have to do these things in a whole new way. I mean, if you're doing something like selling windows, you can't do the in-home sales like you're so used to doing. Uh,
Right.
People don't want you in the house. I mean, our city is on a actual shutdown to shelter in place order, which means my husband's company is actually a construction company, so it's still essential, but there's a lot of changing that you have to do and a lot of things that you have to do different, where I'm going, you have to get a Zoom account, you have to invite them, you have to FaceTime them, you have to do these things to do your sales calls, and you have to figure out how to make those work in a different capacity. So a business that you would never think would have to go virtual to survive has to do something virtual and has to change their whole entire format. And even if it's not the best thing for the business, and it's not the best way to present the information, it's still presenting the information. You still
Right.
have to do it. You can't just shut down completely and not do anything. We've been looking at ideas about virtual home shows since so many of them are getting postponed or canceled. Postponed just means, especially for someone who does a lot of home shows to get leads for their business, means that they're going to have multiple shows on the same weekend and they're going to have to choose between one or the other. So they're still losing a show in
Right.
that. Does that mean you hire more people and train more people, or does that mean, and especially since your business has been running differently and running on a shoestring budget possibly during this time period? Because I mean, if you think about restaurants quickly pivoted. I don't know about where you are, but it was immediate where everybody turned to delivering right away. So
Right.
even places that do not traditionally have takeout now have curbside and takeout.
Right.
And there was this nice story. We have a local magazine here called Westwood.
Oh,
It's
very
a
familiar with it.
Yeah, Westwood is a really nice, but they do a lot of restaurant and industry type things in
Right.
this magazine about announcements of new restaurants and things. Well, there was a restaurant that was scheduled to open on the 18th of March. Well, our shelter in place order went in. It was announced on the 16th.
Oh, ouch.
So first of all, for the restaurant and downtown industry here in Denver, that meant that they were not going to have. We're going to be missing two major days: St. Patrick's Day,
Yep.
and we were going to be missing, so no parades, no nothing like that. And there's a lot of people who go downtown for that holiday, but it also opening day is another one. So they've postponed our opening day, which is actually was supposed to be, I think, last Friday, I think, or last. It was scheduled. So opening day is either the last week in March or the first week in April here. So, and that's a huge day as well when you have
Right.
opening. There's a lot of people that go downtown. They've all pivoted and everything, but there's this one restaurant that was about to open their doors right when the shelter in place was going. And the story came out in Westwood, which I applaud them for putting this story out there, because the very first thing I did was share the story and get it out to everybody who was on my social media to say, we need to order from this restaurant so it doesn't fail before it even starts. So it was a wonderful thing that happened, but as far as I know, they're still doing okay. They weren't planning on doing anything like that. So if you think about
Right.
it, if you're not a takeout restaurant, and now you have to be a takeout restaurant, you have to order supplies for that and get your supplies in.
Oh, yeah, there's some major
Yeah,
shifting
so
that goes on.
shifting and everything, but I have to applaud all the restaurants in the area. So, living downtown, we most often would go out and eat, and it's so funny because when I told my family back in Ohio that we were going to be a shelter in place, my mom, my dad, and my sister, all three looked at each other going, okay, I've seen Jen's refrigerator and I'm not really sure that's fine. And I had to laugh about that because we buy groceries. It's funny because we actually shop by the day at the grocery store. We
Sure.
don't in advance
You
for
don't
multiple.
have to, you just walk out, you get what you need, and yeah.
I live across the street from Whole Foods. So we literally live across the street from Whole Foods and 2 blocks from the other grocery store. So we literally just walk and get what we need and take it home. And because we walk to the grocery store, we're not buying 2 or 3 weeks worth of food. Like
No, because you got to carry that stuff home.
good to carry. We actually drive the 2 blocks when we're gonna stock up on things like water and things like that.
Right.
When we a lot of stuff we're gonna have to carry, which is funny for us because I mean we literally live 2 blocks from the grocery store.
Right.
Across the street from Whole Foods. So everybody was so worried about us not having supplies, and we're like, okay, we're adults. We know how to function. We actually went grocery shopping and got food. You're gonna be fine. But because we can get stuff delivered to us, it's also supporting those
Right.
places that are unable to, they pivoted very well. They switched it out, they did it immediately. And we're fortunate enough to have a lot of delivery service. We even have delivery for alcohol here. So
Yeah, alcohol sales, I guess, have soared, like they said, 50% or something, you know? So,
well, yes. So, I mean, so we can get everything delivered to us. So we've been trying to pick, a couple days a week, even though, we're trying to do the whole, let's get the groceries, let's make the food, and let's have us at the least amount of contact. But they're doing no contact deliveries and things like that. So it's a way to support our local businesses, which I think is really good because the last thing we want is a lot of businesses in one industry failing because they had to shut
right.
down, like restaurants and things like
And
that.
there's ways to get creative, like you're saying, to support what these businesses are, and it is coming together as a unit to support each and every one of us and stuff, make sure that everybody stays alive. Now, unfortunately, there's going to be some businesses that just aren't going to survive. And then
Yeah.
you're going to have other businesses that are going to just, explode. But that's what happens when you go through some major changes, right? And but it's getting creative. You mentioned virtual. Okay, so
Yeah.
you're doing virtual, and and that's a word that means a lot of different things to different people. So when you say virtual, you're looking at Skype, you're looking at Zoom, right? Which is a good way to communicate because we're on a Zoom right now,
Yes.
right?
Very. Yes.
And it's great. And kudos to you for coming on with that little bit of fear base, but stepping up to the plate and coming on. Kudos, girl. Kudos, right? And the more you do, the more you get used to it, And if you want to know how to get better at that, because this is all about being that better you, right? Go back and watch this video several times. Watch how you sit, watch how you move your head, watch what's going on. Are you looking up? Are you looking down? Are you tilted this way? When I when I first started going in front of the camera and I started watching, and it's like my head would always go to one side. I'm like, what the heck is wrong with my neck?
Well, and it has to do with making yourself feel comfortable. So I did my first Facebook Live this week as well,
Oh, good for
and
you.
yeah, so it's to me, this is getting me into a realm that I probably would have procrastinated getting into.
And I think that's true for a lot of people. Just getting that connection. FaceTime is one thing, but getting on a video like this, and I want to go back to this virtual thing, right?
Yes.
Have you ever heard of, and I'm sure you have, virtual reality?
Yes, I actually worked for a telecommunications company
Oh,
for
well, there
many.
you go. So you
Oh,
know what virtual reality is, but the concept I think most people have with virtual reality is games,
yes.
right? I mean, Facebook is actually coming out with their virtual reality platform here, I think probably in a month. I think in May is when they're scheduled to release it, right? And but what we've done is work with virtual reality. We have a platform that's a very solid and very crystal clear elite platform that is a virtual reality world. When you go into it, you have your little avatar. But what
Yeah.
we've created in these worlds is a boardroom,
Okay.
office space,
Oh,
auditoriums,
yes.
right? So, because I've been working with this for about a year, is how can I take my workshops in the classes that I teach into that virtual world? Not this Zoom thing. I mean, granted, you see people on here and everything, and it's great for one-on-ones. But when you have a group of people, let's say 30, 40, 50 people in a class setting, it's not the
It's
same. You don't get the synergism, you get the interaction. However, when you move into the virtual reality, and you don't need the glasses because you can do it straight from PC, and you bring people into an auditorium, the psyche takes that, and all of a sudden, here you are in this auditorium space. You begin relating to the person next to you because you have all the little avatars, right? And
yeah.
it shifts and it becomes real because you are looking at an auditorium. You have the chairs, people are sitting next to you. You can talk to that person right next to you. You can find out who their name. You just run the mouse over it. Hey, John, what are you doing? And this is cool, isn't it? Yeah. And boom, that reality in that 3D becomes real. Now you're getting that synergism. And so the person up front, can do and teach as if were and get that same result because you are there. The psyche shifts into it. It's amazing how fast it happens. You know?
Yeah.
And so looking at it from that perspective, so we actually have a university that you can do. And again, being in this lockdown, you know, well, you can't get to the gym if you want to do some exercise. So we actually have a track out back that you can run. So I did that. I was like, God, I've been sitting in front of this computer like forever, and I just need to get some energy. So I thought, you know, what the heck? I am going to go. So I took myself into the platform, went out back, and I started running laps.
Yeah.
And my body started to feel it because I was in it. It was my avatar doing the running, but my
Yeah.
body was responding to it. You know, and this is something that's been done for a long time in the sports industry, you know, and learning. It's that mind thing, you know, it's that mind over matter. And in the mind, you always hit your target,
Right.
right? And so they know that works. So the virtual reality, taking it from that gaming and putting it into the business aspect, you know, and so let's just say you've got an office and you've got, you know, 8 or 10 employees in that office,
Right.
right? And you want to have that work at home environment. You can all be on the computer. You can build it so each one has their own little cubicle room where you can actually get up, walk over, and start talking to that person that's private in that little cubicle. And the other person on the other side is not going to hear you. You can have that boardroom where it's like, okay, we call a meeting and all the little avatars come out. You sit in the boardroom, you have a conversation, you have a mastermind, you have a roundabout, whatever you want to call it, right there, and you're in it because the person is right there. It's not this Zoom that keeps that separation. You're right there. And the response that we're getting, because we're actually starting up a networking group, like your lead generations, your BNIs, your commerces, and all that. And we call it BDI, or DBI, which is Digital Business International, because the platform we are on is global.
Okay.
And there's going to be no limitation in, you know, and say, oh, well, you can only have one massage in there. You can only have one therapist that does this. You can only have one coach. You can only have one realtor. We're not limiting to that because we're working on such a global expanses. And that has taken off like wildflower, you know. And so if anybody out there that's listening is interested in something like that to take your business to that level, please comment below, reach out, private message me. We'll get you in that because you can have your own environment built in there, and it's not expensive. It's not thousands of dollars, right? And all you have to do is have your internet connection, and we'll tell you, you know, what kind of cards you need, you know, video cards and stuff. But it takes virtual reality to a whole different level. And I think you're going to start seeing more and more and more of that because of the changes and the shifting that we've been put into. And so why not be on the front end of it instead of the back end of it, right? And
Yes.
so again, it's interpreting what this virtual world is and how we start to interact, because we are going to interact differently, but people need people on that social environment. Technology kind of has separated us when everybody is looking down here on this phone and doing whatever. I mean, you're in a restaurant with your family or even with friends, and you're texting across the table to each other. What the heck is that?
No.
Right? You know, so it's an opportunity to get back into the foundations of. But how can you take that now and utilize that? It's getting creative with what is out there. This stuff has been there. And you talk about your little fear of being in the face of things. They actually have been working in the mental health industry with virtual reality for quite a few years with people who have social anxieties or PTSD, fear of standing in front of a group, fear of getting behind the camera, things like that, and working in that virtual reality thing to move past those phenomena that are going on, you know, that fear, so that now you can start easily moving out into the presentation and not have that, because you've been up there. And people who would like to interact with people because of the social thing, right? They want to interact with people, but there's that little fear of distance of being judged or not accepted, or how people are going to look at them. And well, so let's just say now you're in this virtual reality, and you're doing a workshop, and everybody has their little avatar, and you don't need to use your real name on there. The curtains drop, the barriers drop. You can
Right.
get more out of the event. You don't have to worry about who you're sitting next to or how they're going to judge you,
Okay.
right? They don't know if you have, maybe a disfigure from an accident or whatever the case is, and so you're kind of um, um, self-aware of that, and it's like, are people staring at me because I have this, whatever type of thing. Some people can't go to these things because maybe they're in a wheelchair or they're immobilized, yet their minds are strong and they're not able to attend events. Now they can be in a real world, jump around with this avatar, and have that reality when maybe their physical vessel isn't capable of it. And there's no judgment because nobody knows, and they can really interact on a different level. They can attend things where before it's kept them back. So you've got all these different options when you're working in that virtual reality difference, when you're bringing it into a whole different space.
Very
Right?
nice. Yes.
Right, so we have lots of options, lots and lots of options of where you can go with this and what you can do, and that's what I love about these shows, able to just share the different aspects of things with people, and get that message out. If you have a story and you would like to be on the show, reach out to me in a private message or just comment below here and say, how do I get on your show? Right? It's pretty easy. All you got to do is ask. I can't put you on if I don't know you and you don't ask, right? So reach out, and we'll get you there. Even if you're a little gun shy of being on that camera, get out there and do it, right? And then when you stand in the midst of that fear, you can move through it. And so working with clients in the coaching industry, in what you're doing, share a little bit about the audience and exactly what type of coach you are in specific. What is your area of expertise as a coach? Because there's so many,
Oh,
different arenas when it comes to coaching.
yes. So I actually shy away from telling people I'm a business and sales coach because everybody is just like, oh, you're one of those. Oh, are you a life? The other one I get is, are you a life coach? And I'm like, no. I guess I help people uh, in their life, but I'm not a life coach per se.
Right.
So there's so many different types of coaching that's out there. I focus on the behavioral side of business, though, which means it's understanding who you are and what makes you unique and where your strengths lie. We talk about your fears, your limitations, and uh, how that behavioral profile makes you interact. It's the way you make decisions. Um, it's the way that you do everything that you do. So if you're given a set of circumstances, you are likely going to follow this path because of your behavior. And when we say behavior, behavior is adaptable, which is what makes it so great. It's not like the traditional, and I love all types of personality tests and the strengths finders, the Colbys, the Myers-Briggs, all of them. They all have very good
Right.
information, but the
Right.
one thing we have in common is here's the box you live in, here's how you interact with the world, and here's how the world interacts with you.
Yep.
I work a lot with the disc realm, and it's DISC. It's because, first of all, it was invented by the person who invented the lie detector test.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
about the behavior and about the things that you do differently when you're under stress, which is how he developed this whole profile and everything that he has. So we have four basic profiles, but we're blends of all of these things. And it actually digs much deeper into values, and hidden motivators that you have. And it's very in depth. But the one thing that I love about it is behavior can be adapted. Behavior can be adapted for situations. Behavior
Hmm.
can be adapted for environments. We adapt our behavior when we're in certain situations. We act differently under stress than we do under non-stress situations. And it's because human nature is so amazing because we are apt to adapt to things. We are driven to do those things. We want to be a part of a greater good. We want to be a part of something and accepted for who we are. So we will actually adapt our behavior. So I help people understand what their personality profile is, what they're likely to do in situations, and how to recognize the personality profiles of other people and adapt their own behavior to meet their customer and client needs. Because in sales or in anything that you're doing, the one thing that we do know is you make solid connections and you want to work with people who you think are most like you. So you're drawn, you gravitate towards that. So if you, as a business person or as a leader, or even in your everyday personal life, are an individual who is able to recognize who you're dealing with, and we're not doing something that's outside of our profile. What we're doing is bringing up something that may be a little bit weaker at the time and bringing it out front and making it the thing that we lead with. And so you're pulling something that you normally don't use. It's like using those muscles you usually don't use.
Right.
They're there, they're capable of working. It hurts a little bit more to do it. Until you get used to doing it more often, but you still have it there to use when it's necessary. And so I teach people how to just sidestep in a situation. For instance, I'm a very active profile. You can see I use my hands when I talk a lot.
Yeah, I kind of have an eye. I kind of do that too.
But if you notice, before I started talking and getting really excited, I actually keep my hands in my lap just like they are right now, so I don't do it. It's because most of the people that I interact with probably aren't active profiles. So it's distracting to them. It can be overwhelming for some people.
Yes,
So
it can. That's so true.
so I have adjusted my own behavior when I'm talking to people until I recognize if they're an active profile or a passive
Well,
profile.
I'm an active, so you can move your hands as much as you want.
This is why I started to do it, because I recognize it in other people. But and so I teach people how to do that, how to understand who they are, how to understand who they're dealing with, and how to adjust that behavior to
Right.
meet the. It works in leadership, it works in communication, it works in sales. And so I teach a lot of things that focus on that behavioral side of things. And even with I have a virtual talk that I'm about to re-put out there, but it's managing complex change, and and I think I named it something about gaining uncertainty in a time of crisis. So,
Right.
but it's about managing that complex change. But I actually go through and say, here are the behavioral profiles. Let's figure out which one you fit into most. It's a 30,000 foot look at what it is. It's a very high level look at what your personality profile is without an assessment. And then, okay, which one are you? So these are the things you should be doing during this time to help you adapt better and get through that change grid, and understand how to get from, no, this is not what I want to do, and rejecting change, all the way through to committing to changing and pivoting and adapting to what you need to do. And there are some people, so active profiles actually do it very quickly and easily. They will go through it very quickly and say, okay, this isn't working today. Tomorrow, this is what I'm doing. And here's how I'm adjusting. And it's something that they're driven to do. But most people fall into the other category, and they're more of that passive profile. So they go through it a lot slower. So they need people that are active to pull them through it a lot quicker and encourage them to do it. So a lot of what I'm doing right now is helping those individuals get through that change and adapt. And active profiles usually are future reaching, and they're early adopters, and they're the people who are like, oh, it's bright, shiny. I actually have,
chase it, right?
yeah, I actually had a colleague that coined the phrase or coined the term shiny squirrel, which I think encompasses everything about what an active profile is.
Right.
It's
Squirrel, get it. Yes.
it's the shiny squirrel. And when she said it, was like meeting with her after she said it while she was doing the talk. And I met with her afterwards and I looked at her and I said, I'm so using shiny squirrel and I'm going to start calling it shiny squirrel syndrome. And she kind of laughed and I'm like, but I'm totally going to give you credit every time I talk about it. So, um, but you need those individuals. They're the early adopters. They're the ones that grasp on and say, okay, even though this isn't broke right now, I want to see how we can make it better. For those who are the ones that are less likely to be those early adopters, they want to see how, they want to see how the first generation of a new product is. They want other people to tell them. They're going to ask their friends. They're going to do research and things like that. So somebody who is like you and I, like an active profile, needs to take their hand and take them through it and get them to that, yes, this is what we need to do now.
And you can't push them.
Yeah.
You push them, you just they run. It's overwhelming. It's so overwhelming, and so and that's what's great talking about the personalities is because you have personality traits, and the first thing you need to do is recognize your own personality traits and the things that you want to shift within you. And when you
Exactly.
can start to recognize those things in yourself, it's easier to start recognizing them in other people. And that's the whole theme here of becoming that better you when you can recognize where you want to create the shifts. Where is that personality trait that's running on autopilot that you want to shut down and shift and create a different autopilot? Watch what the other person is doing. What is their running in autopilot? There's all similarities in the different personalities. There's four main personalities. Whatever personality test you take, there's thousands of them out there, but they all reach the same object, right?
Yes, they definitely do. And you, even though that's part of your core and that's who you are. So even if I'm an active personality type, I actually can I can change what I'm doing in the moment to
Right.
become more towards what you are. It's not changing my personality though. It's
No,
just, it's,
honoring that other person, right?
it is understanding what makes them most comfortable
Hmm.
and taking them along with you for that.
Right, right.
So it's one of those things that I love it. I very much so. It's something I'm super passionate about. I spent 20 years in the human resources industry, and the one thing that I learned was the first question I would always ask when somebody would bring me an issue is, "Well, let's figure out. Do you know why this occurred? And if you don't, that's the first thing we're going to figure out."
Right.
Why it happens. So defining your why is the very first most important step. And then the next thing that you need to do is continue to walk down the path is to figure out the other person's why and what makes them do the things they do and what's important to them and what's things that they leave behind. And and then you make those connections based on that. And one of the things that I have that I do a lot of talks on is how to network to connect. And the number one thing that I tell people is don't talk about your business and don't exchange business cards. And everybody is just,
Right.
wait. And
I
I'm
know,
like,
because that's old school. They're like, wait a minute, how am I going to get a client, right?
yeah. And it doesn't, it works better when you make a connection. So a lot of my networking events that I hold that are in person, we do things that are outside of what your business is. Now, I'm not telling you you never get to talk about your business. It's just not part of that first introduction. It's not part of that
Yeah, what
conversation.
can I do to serve you? Let me
Yeah,
get to know who you are and
exactly.
what you're all about, and
Exactly.
how can I serve you in that. And when you listen to that other person, now they're feeling important. And how are you going to get them if you know nothing about them?
Exactly.
And
And the other important thing is it should be a balanced conversation. They should be learning things about you that makes them want to connect with you as much as you're learning things about them that makes you want to connect with them. So when you're building rapport and building relationships, it's got to be a bridge. And a bridge cannot be built by one person.
No, no, it can't.
Coming from both sides and you meet somewhere in the middle, and maybe it leans on one side or the other, but you got to kind of meet in the middle with it.
Yeah.
And so it's having that good balance, because people are like, oh, I'm always just like, well, tell me more about you, tell me about you, tell me about you. And I'm like, well, what do they know about you if you keep doing that, except for you don't want to talk about yourself, and so you're hiding something. I said, now they're suspicious on what you're trying to hide. Or and you eventually get to that point where you say, well, yes, I'm a business and sales coach, but the reason why I introduced myself as a connector first is because as I'm listening to them, I may know somebody who can help them with whatever they're trying to solve.
And that's one thing I think people have to realize when you're in business and you're in this networking, right? It's not the person sitting in front of you that you need to connect with. You
Yes.
need to connect to their database, because this person is not going to share their database with you if they don't first know, like, and trust you. And that's where that connection has to take place, right? So it's not that person across the table that you're looking to do business with. It's their database.
Well, and it's not
So,
only that, you just need to, I mean, I've been at networking events. First of all, it's when I go to networking events, if somebody hands me a card and they just hand me a card when they're trying to introduce themselves, I'm just like, I'm gonna go get a drink. I actually walk away from those type of conversations because I'm like,
right.
no, this is not how I want to do it. Or if I'm in a mode to teach people, I will teach people. It depends on what kind of mode I'm in at the time.
Which personality am I pulling out of my deck, right?
Here in Denver, we have, and I won't name exactly what it is, but there are some events where they will shove hundreds of people into a room together. And it's like, I'm kind of glad for not having them going on right now, but you are basically in a space like this. You can barely move around with a drink or food in your hands. You're trying to have a conversation with people, and there are hundreds of people trying to have conversations at the same time. And when I say hundreds of people, I mean you're shoved into the space and you can barely move through. Once you get in the door, once you get to a place, you basically cannot move from that place. And if you try to go through the crowd, I liken it to my days in college when I used to go to dance clubs and try to
Right,
get through
right.
to get to the good spot on the dance floor. It's kind of like that environment. And sometimes you'll have people walking through this and shuffling through this crowd and just shoving business cards in your face and saying, contact me. And it's just this huge, massive, overwhelming. And for people who are not for people who are extroverts, it's very overwhelming for them as well because there's so much that's going on. You can't focus anywhere. For people who are introverts, it's so overwhelming and so massive they don't know what they're supposed to do next, and it's all around not the best way to do networking.
Now, if I've seen where, you come together in a group of networking like that, but everybody, so you have tables, like eight chairs where it's a speed dating, but it's a speed networking, and you have 5 minutes to converse, and everybody gets their 5 minutes, and then boom, you get up and you find another table and sit back down, and then it's like, who did I just talk to? Oh
Yeah,
God,
and
this person was really interesting, but who the hell were they?
exactly. And when
Right?
you're in those events and anything that's like that, where you're just like, your whole entire main objective is to tell somebody in the least amount of time what you do and how you can help them, you can't make those connections in those
No,
places. So
no,
to
and
be,
yeah,
you definitely want to be able to make a proper connection. So what I always tell people is have a conversation with one individual, make sure that it's somebody who you want to meet for coffee, and then schedule coffee.
and
And
and then really have that one-on-one connection. If there's a synergism there, if there's a vibration, a connection that you want to take it to the next step, yes, then put it on the calendar, right? And this is kind of what we're doing in the virtual reality world, because there's going to be thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in there, but you're not going to see them all at the same time, right? There'll be different groups and whatever and the availabilities, but because we have leaders, and it's going to be like a networking where everyone is sitting around the table, and it's orderly fashion. You'll have your 30 seconds to fame to stand up and say, hi, my name is so and so, the business I'm with, this is my ideal client, and a lead I'm looking for today is someone that could use, boom, and that's it. So you have 30 seconds, and business cards are available at that point, right? So that you're helping other businesses grow, and then we spotlight someone to get up in front that has 15 minutes to do a slideshow, a presentation, to really experience everyone there. This is what I do, and this is how I do it, and these are the people that I'm looking for. So it's a boost and a help with that. It's not this chaos all over. I gotta go over here, and I gotta go over there, and I gotta, right? And it's honoring that space, and then also giving testimonials,
Right.
when you've used the service.
Yes, definitely. So sounds like a very good concept. Going back to, when you're networking and when I teach people how to network, you want to make a connection that's not about your business though.
Right.
And it's not always about how you can help them, and it's about learning who they are. And when I ask people, I'm like, tell me a little bit about yourself. And they're like, do you want to know about my business? And I'm like, whatever you want to talk about right now. If you want to talk about your dog, if you want to talk about this, you want to talk about that, whatever you want to talk about right now. And it gives them a different, you want to know who I am, not what my business does.
Yeah,
And
you're not your business. That's
yes.
what you do. Right.
And
Right.
And so you want to get away from that and doing, the doing the virtual coffees or the virtual networking and things like that allows for that a little bit better, but it can still be very overwhelming for some people where
Right.
there are some people who do it very well and have very good concepts with it. There are other people who are like still doing those. Let's get as many people packed in as much as we
Yeah,
possibly can.
that's a really tough situation. When you're doing a social networking, that's getting to know the person and who they are, not necessarily, like you said, their business. But if you're in a sit down business, that's what you're there for, right?
Exactly.
And to help each other's businesses grow. So know the environment that you're in before you step into it. Right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Gosh, Jennifer, we could just continue with this because it's such great information, and I hope our listeners are getting some stuff out of this. Please comment below and just let us know what we can do to help you build that business, right? And we can't do anything for you if you don't let us know who you are. And reach out, private message, comment below, whatever it takes. And if you want Jennifer back on the show, then make a comment, say bring her back, right? And we can do that, and we'll see if she's not quite as scared the next time, right? You done a great job. You really did. You were in it. You were there, and kudos again. And that's becoming that best you, and that's what the show is all about. So Jennifer, one last thing that you could leave our audience with, what would that be?
Lead with your passion. Find and define what your passion is. That's understanding who you are and knowing what your passion is, and always lead with your passion when you're talking to people, because just as much as you want to be next person who's excited, that's what you want to do. So,
Exactly. Oh, my partner decided to pop in. Hi, Rob. Okay, we lost our show here with Jennifer Bilger, and I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. And again, technology is technology, right? So thank you all for being here. Go out there, be that best you can be, because Jennifer and I, we're going to continue being the best we that we can be. And anything that we can do to help you, please feel free and comment below. And we'll see you on the next show.